Kia ora everybody and welcome to Insider's Guide. Today we're discussing the resort with some of the best extremes in New Zealand, the Remarkables. While it may not be Jackson Hole, the Remarkables holds its own by Kiwi standards and we'll go over all the best lines in this video. Because the Remarkables appeals to two starkly different demographics, this episode is split into two parts. This part discusses all of the free-ride, off-piste, and shoot options, so if you're looking for background, crowd flow, or on-piste, you'll want part A. So with that, let's begin an Insider's Guide to Ski Resorts, the Remarkables. Alright, time for what the Remarkables is best at, expert freeride. Over on the far lookers right here are outward bound and homeward run. These are wide rolling fields, gullies, ridges, and bowls with endless room to play. However, they do get down to a much lower elevation, which can mean there are exposed obstacles along the lower parts. Additionally, you'll have to wait for a bus, which, around midday, can take a while to come. The area is very exposed to the sun and can get crusty quickly. As a whole, I would say these areas are worth it on powder days, but not at any other time. One exception is if conditions are holding up, you can ski outward as your last run of the day if you're parked in Car Park 4 to avoid the shuttle ride down, if you make it before they close the gate at the end of highway. As alluded to, those can be accessed by taking the highway, which is an ungroomed traverse that is very visible on the skier's left side of Calypso. Shady Lady is the only red off this, and to be honest, it borders on black for me. It's got lots of rocks and tussock, is quite narrow at the top, and is pretty steep. Rainbow Warrior is a nice wide chute, and is honestly a decent difficulty comparison to Shady Lady. Hourglass is a wide chute, but it chokes up in the middle at one section. Expressway has multiple chutes, and is an easier area overall, as the rocks are not nearly as prominent and the chutes not nearly as narrow. All of this stuff below the highway requires an extremely significant amount of speed to traverse out of, otherwise you may find yourself doing a short hike back up to mid-steeps. Mid-Station Bowl goes down the backside of the ridge and typically doesn't fill in the same amount as the other runs off of highway, leaving it very sharky. However, it does not require a traverse out. Waterfalls has snow guns, but they're rarely used, meaning it is often one of the last runs to open for the season. It is a free ride area, and it and Valley Floor have lots of rocky spines and wind-buffed gullies. Obviously, pick a gully and stick to it. Both runs drop you off weirdly below the bottom of Shadow, requiring an awkward hike skate back up to the queue. You can see this hike on the map that goes to a scenic overlook. In all honesty, I've never done it, but I estimate it at 10 to 15 minutes and moderate difficulty. It's not worth it if you're just hiking up to the overlook, but, switching maps here, you can see it offers access to an entire other area of gnarly terrain. This stuff takes a ton of snow to be skiable, but look, if you're skilled enough to be able to hit this stuff, you don't need my advice, cause this stuff has rocks everywhere, so even the best I can do won't help much. Now, this Ross Schatz Trail was new for last season, and it is named for Ross Lawrence, a legendary manager of the Remarkables who just stepped down in early 2024. However, I'm sorry Ross, but the trail isn't great. It's just an ungroomed traverse, but it doesn't even get you to this gate. You have to sidestep up to get to it, or pick your way through a large rock field skiers right of the main traverse. From this gate, you can head straight back down into the basin on Sunrise Face, which can be fun in the late season. However, it is one of the areas with the most hidden rocks at the resort, so while it is deceivingly nice looking down it, you'll be lucky to come out unscathed, especially in low snow or early season. From this gate, which isn't really a gate but more of just a crossroads, you can also hike up a very short way to the top of a small hill, from which you'll have access to all these blacks. Front Face is a very wide open area and honestly skis very similarly to Sunrise Face. The nose typically requires picking your way through some boulders before it opens up. Or, if you traverse a bit skier's right, you can access a fun little chute. Both have lots of hidden rocks at the bottom, making them a bit treacherous for the first half of the season. East Face and Boulder Basin both start off super wide, with almost bowl-like expanses, but their lower sections also get pretty difficult, with lots of rocks and big boulders to go around. From Boulder Basin, you can traverse hard skier's right to get over to the bottom of the Alta chutes, which is my recommended method to avoid the rockiest areas. While I've got this map up, I'll discuss access and egress to the chutes. If you exit left off of the Shadow Chair, you'll be on a traverse that takes you directly to Escalator. It also offers good views, even if you want to then backtrack instead of skiing Escalator. From there, you can hike up the ridge to Elevator, which only takes a few minutes. Alternatively, you can exit right off of Shadow and hike from there, which is a bit steeper but more direct, going straight up to Elevator and a backcountry access gate. Also accessible from Ross Schatz is the Alta Red, which we'll discuss further in a second. Now, from the bottom of Alta Red, Escalator, and Elevator, you'll find yourself at Lake Alta, which is not where you want to be, because if you actually end up at the lake, you're going to have a long, hard slog back to the front side. Instead, from each of these runs, when they open up, traverse hard skiers left. At the end of the lake, the routes split. Going right is generally a bit easier, but I still find it harder than your average red. There are lots of rocks to avoid, and making one wrong turn can put you on a route you really don't want to be on. The left-hand path is typically more skied, but less easy to get lost on. I mean, in all seriousness, this red is legitimately hard to follow, so be extremely, extremely careful. Switching over to this Alta Chutes map, you can see this area, labeled ambiguously as just Alta Chutes. This is the Alta Red, and this map just hasn't been updated with Ross shots and the new Shadow Chair. You can also see the Boulder Basin and East Face routes just discussed a little bit more clearly. It gets extremely crusty at the top, but is pretty easy overall relative to everything around it from there. It does ski like a red, but as we just discussed, sometimes the lower part makes it tricky. Mike's is practically just part of Alta Red, but has some large rocks in the middle of the zone that form some big chutes. Elevator and Escalator are the main two true chutes in this area. Escalator feels more like a gully than a chute, without big cliffs on the side, but it's extremely difficult to escape to the side, so it is still a chute. It is extremely popular due to its easy access from Shadow, and gets so skied off that it can often develop massive moguls in the middle. Due to its easy access, it also gets a lot of people overskiing their abilities and scraping the snow off, side-slipping the whole way down, so the snow deteriorates much more quickly in Escalator than in most other chutes. I much prefer Elevator, which is also more difficult in my opinion. It's got many methods to get in, but all converge to a rocky choke about 1/4 of the way down. Past that, it opens up to a super nice chalky area. As a whole, I would say Elevator is one of the longest and most consistent rockline chutes in New Zealand, and as such is one of my personal favorites. Just don't forget to traverse towards the bottom. Compared to Escalator, it seems like nobody knows Elevator exists, and I've never seen multiple uncoordinated people on it simultaneously. Escalator and Elevator, but especially the latter, are extremely steep. This map also shows Festival and Pipeline, both of which require a metric buttload of snow to be skiable. Even then, both lines are extremely, extremely narrow, and Pipeline requires a straight line and Festival requires a cliff drop. This terrain zone shown by this map, including everything we just discussed, is one of the only areas at the Remarkables that faces south, so snow retention is significantly better in these chutes. That, in addition to the lower traffic and the purely gnarly terrain options, make this area one of my favorite zones in all of New Zealand. Now, back on the main map here, you can see these two hikes from the top of Curvy Basin. You can also see Anzac Trail and the Gallipoli Chutes. This is labeled poorly because Anzac Trail is just the ridge from the Emerald Buttress hike. The Gallipoli Chutes is this whole area, and it is much easier to access Gallipoli from Curvy than from Sugar Bowl. I'm going to switch to an alternative map in a second, but basically, just realize that this Emerald Buttress is pretty much separate from the Gallipoli Chutes, and while Emerald is accessed from Sugar Bowl, Gallipoli is accessed from Curvy. Accessed from a gate about halfway down Water Race, there is a 10 to 15 minute hike up Emerald Buttress. This is the most difficult hike in the resort, but is worth it because very few people are willing to do it. In fact, even on a big powder day, it'll typically see less than a dozen people. Stopping at the top of the rocky section and taking in the view is an absolute must because there's not much of a view from the true summit of the hike as the buttress blocks it. At the top of the hike there is a backcountry gate, and by gate I mean just a sign that looks like this that everybody blows right past. I don't talk about backcountry in Insider's Guide because it's too much and too risky, but I'm gonna nudge you guys slightly here. Now, the ski route down inbounds isn't the most technical in the field, and it gets very exposed to the sun, making it hard and crusty very shortly after snowfall. For the descent itself, you have a couple of different options, those being skiers right or skiers left of the hike. Skiers right starts off as a mellow bowl that can get kind of flat at the bottom, before dropping off into a much steeper face with lots of tussock and some exposed rocks. Skiers left also starts off very open before depositing you at the top of a very, very tight chute. At that point, you can traverse skiers left to a much more open area, or take that chute. I really enjoy the skiers left area because of how empty it is and the options it gives, so I would highly recommend checking out Emerald Buttress. Alright, now for our fourth and final trail map of the video, let's discuss Curvy Headwall. You can see here where there's a traverse from Centurion. As you get off the lift, traverse as high as you can skiers right. Trust me, You gotta start as early as possible and stay as high as possible in order to make it. Obviously, the traverse is very narrow. It gets you to and through Gallipoli 5, 4, and 3. Past 3, however, it gets extremely rocky and typically impassable. About halfway across the traverse, you'll see a mellow hike on your right, which you can take to access the upper 10 meters of Gallipoli 3, 4, and 5, and all of chutes 1 and 2. These Gallipoli chutes are a bit shorter than the Alta chutes, but are equally as challenging. My personal favorite is 3, which is wide enough on the top half, but has a tight choke about 2/3 of the way down, and then opens up significantly. 5 and 4 are both pretty rocky, and 1 and 2 get beyond the realm of chute and just become general off-piste. Do beware that the Gallipoli area is very exposed, and thus gets extremely crusty extremely quickly. However, it is a much less popular area than the Alta chutes, and can hold untouched for much longer than other chutes at the field. Along the Gallipoli traverse, there is also a great open face that you can drop into for some less technical off-piste. Now, on the main trail map we saw 2 hikes. The left-hand hike goes straight up, taking 10 to 15 minutes and terminating at the top of this area labeled Dre. The other hike goes significantly up across for 5 to 10 minutes, stopping at the Y saddle. From the top of both of these hikes, there are obviously other hikes to all of everything else. This whole area is a fantastic area, referred to in general as curvy headwall. There are chutes, gullies, spines, open areas, and all sorts of fun stuff to explore in this area. One of my favorite things to do is go up the left hike and cruise Hot Pocket, which is typically much less tracked than the Y saddle side. Going all the way up to Ambush is a good option as well, and there are several other more technical options if you really want to make your hike worth it. Well, that about wraps it up for the Remarkables. Now go check out one of our other Insider's Guides, all about other resorts in New Zealand, North America, and Europe. As always, please put any questions down below. Thank you all so much for watching. All my love, I'm out.